public service announcements. I've just started recording. It might pick up some of your audio. I'm really trying to record my voice and the screen. We had a request. We also, our previous session, the recording never made it to us, so we don't have it. We'd like to have one. Is everybody here okay with me recording? I'm just, all right, anybody have objections? No, okay, great. So we're recording. May or may not pick up your voice from over here. I can't tell.
And there's no video of you.
There's no video.
Yeah.
I'm only trying to grab the screen and my voice as best I can. So I won't move around as I like to do. I have to run the machine here anyway. So thank you for sharing your insights, your ideas. I never heard billable hours. I guess it's new since I graduated from IU. I hadn't heard that one before, Tim. And I wish you'd shared on.
That wasn't the whole.
Yeah. So, but Ray mentioned some things. I heard a couple other ideas mentioned, and we're today and tomorrow we have a different session. Plug that, where we'll talk about just managing these projects, especially consulting projects more broadly. I mentioned a team, a platform called Ripen that might be able to help you with some of the front end things that you're doing. So we'll talk about that, or you could ask me at some point in the conference. What Ripen's about and how it works. You might find, because I use that as well. But today, my initial thoughts was much like Ray, dividing points, fourth rankings. Back when I was a doc student in Indiana, I did that. I did it manually, and that is a pretty labor intensive. Even with something like Qualtrics, you can put up a survey. It turns out you can get all that data real easy. You can get it very easily. It's processing it that's really hard. There's a tool called CatMate. You may have heard of. I got a few nods. Okay. CatMate I checked out. It's a little bit limited. In fact, there's preset questions and items, and you just normally use those. And it may have changed. I check it once in a while. The last time I checked, it really hasn't been updated. So I said, well, the best I could do is manual, and that was extremely labor intensive. So I said, this processing is really hard. Seems like this could be done through an information system solution, but I don't have those skills anymore. I started computer science and now I'm going to management. You studied management, now you're a web developer. True story. Anyhow, maybe it's something we could build, and I'd be happy to pay for it if it exists. And so we explored that and said, we really got to make sure there's nothing out there, because we're going to lose our shirt if we try to develop something that's already been done. And it's a good thing we never did it, because turns out this platform launched in 2010, Teammates, and it's sponsored by the National University of Singapore's College of Computer Science Department. And they've grown to over 2,400 institutions in over 100 countries. And the reason they've grown so fast is because they have an unbeatable price. $0. They charge nothing.
Oh, I
right?
thought that was
Yeah, this is there.
oh, there we go.
Emphasis for for your viewing pleasure. So it is absolutely free, and on top of it, their customer service is excellent. They're very responsive. And last time when we did this, we had to switch from playing this like we are today to doing it virtually. We got people signed up.
They were great.
The management there said, "Oh yeah, we can get them registered and get them so they can use their accounts." Now, many of you don't probably have accounts, and that's right. The best we can do is at least give you the student experience. When you, anybody here have a Teammates instructor account? Not yet. All right. Did you go to the link that we sent? Yeah. You Lauren might have one. Yeah. So, right. All right. So you might have one, but the rest of you probably don't. It's okay. You just have to follow along. And I'll just tell you basically your experience. But what we're going to do first, I'm going to first show you something that's very easy to do in Teammates, which is set up a course and just upload all your emails and show you that I'm doing that. You're going to get links, then go do a peer eval of people in here. So be kind, or I'll be kind. I don't care. You know, that's yeah, be provocative. However you like to do it. Is just see what it's like for the student side. just to get, and this is probably like, Jason, you do this to your students? Yes, I do this to my students, but I haven't got any complaints so far. But anyway, you can see how I set that up. It's incredibly flexible. So I want to be clear about two things that we're trying to accomplish today. One is very flexible. There's so many options. And when I first started using it, and Barbara had this similar experience, it will feel overwhelming. And so part of what we're trying to accomplish, have not used teammates before, is just to ease you into it so that if you do go get an account and do try to use it, you have some experience and don't just look at the screen and have your eyes glaze over, because there is a lot going on in the system. But and again, show you that if you can focus right, it can work very well. The other is to talk about how we can use what Teammates does to help us bring that equity, in the traditional sense of the word, at least, to grade. Right? So we're fair and people getting proportional credit to the proportional effort. All right, so with no further ado, let me switch to taking, I'm going to switch screens here. All right. There we go. So this, when you log in, it's handled through Google authentication. I don't think you have to have a Google account. I use my UNCG account. You log in, and why can't I see my mouse? I'll look up here. It's right here, the Teammates. And we'll send that in a follow-up. Well, it's really small from back there, I'm guessing. Teammates d4.appspot.com. Barbara's going to write it on the board. When you log in, if you have a registered account, Lauren, you could try this.
I'm trying to still log in.
It's possible to have an instructor and student account, so you have to tell it you want to go to the instructor pages up here. We set up a demo session. The sessions are the feedback sessions. You also have to set up a course. So we have our MOETC 2022 course. I'm going to enroll you now. And it's very straightforward. So you just copy out of Excel, which I've already done.
Yeah, let's just point out the Excel sheet. Can you go back to the Excel sheet?
Sure.
So I think this is a good thing to notice. This is actually a really easy way to get all your students loaded into Teammates. Is just they have this really basic Excel sheet where you, and yeah, there you go, where you just put in those headings that you see. Section is optional. Jason hasn't used it. And then you give, Jason named the teams. I usually call mine team 1, team 2, team 3, and name an email address, and that's it. And you'll see here, he's just gonna do a batch, just copy and dump it all in at once. And that's how I do it every single time for my students. Yeah. The site doesn't work.
There's no dots between Teammates and before.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. My bad. There you go. It'll work. I was gonna say it worked this morning.
Did you get on? Who's on? Who's on? Okay. When you're on there, you can request your instructor account. Yeah.
You just won't get it right away, but yeah.
You can request an account. It will take a while. They have to validate that you're really an instructor, and then it will, so they won't happen instantly that I know of. All right, so I enroll you all. All right, so now you're enrolled. Great. So I go back to sessions. We've already got a live session running. The reason it's already running is because they only launch on the hour. So I had to do it in advance. Otherwise, we'd have to wait to 2 o'clock. So I'm just, what I can do instead is do a reminder. And you might like this feature as well. People you go through, people haven't done their feedback. You can go and have it send reminders to everybody who has not submitted. So you say select non-submitters.
So interesting. I'm using my phone because I didn't bring my computer today, and it says you are currently using mobile Safari 15.5. This web browser is not officially supported by Teammates.
Oh, okay.
And then you can go to Safari 13 Plus, which seems like that's what it would be. But then I can see it. But the only reason I bring this up is that I hate using my phone for web stuff because my eyes aren't that great. But students do.
And so I think I'm sure a lot of students use their phones for
Yeah.
doing the work on.
Yeah, I just used it this term. I've used it every term for the past few years, and nobody has brought up the web browser issue. Yeah, I've never come up. So if you check your email, the email that you gave me, you should have a link from teammates, the teammates admin. This is what your students will see. So you get an email, looks like this. And there's a link here that they'll click.
Okay, so Jason, should they start filling out the?
Yeah, so do the survey, please, that we can get a sense of how it works.
So basically, you've been matched, as Jason said, with several other people in here, and so you're gonna be giving feedback on their performance.
And you don't rate yourself.
To John's comment before, here's how complex it is in mathematical terms. This formula is the number of unique relationships in a group. So it's already exponential. You multiply that by the number of items in your survey, and that's the number of data points that you have. And what Qualtrics can't do is organize that for you. This will put this in a format that you can actually process it. And that's the part that when I talked to my friend Ed, I was like, I know that can be done. I cannot do it manually.
I'm naturally lazy, so.
So I tried,
I've been doing
and
it
then
For years and years,
you know,
because it's really easy.
the alternative is like Christy did, or I've done when I didn't have teammates. It's just, hey, do it, give them a percent score, average it up, and that's the adjustment. This allows a lot more nuance and also a lot more detailed feedback because you can ask for more points. And as you saw in my survey, sorry, you can weight them differently. You can do all, sky's the limit. But as far as providing feedback, there's a lot more detail there. So why did I get this? Why did I get 89 for my team? I don't know. But if they ask now with my survey, I can say, well, you were really good at class exercises, but you didn't show up to team meetings. Like, I don't know what happened there. Right. Yeah. And they can see that. They don't even have to ask me because they can see it themselves. Right. So the feedback that you all did, incidentally, I'll publish it and you'll be able to see what you got on your make-believe work. I want to show you another thing that Lauren's seen on his system.
You want to project this, because they're not seeing it right now.
The PowerPoint? No.
But you're on your screen, the video.
Okay, yeah. It's when you set up excuse me, I should say when you get registered, when you register your instructor account, what you'll get is a built-in demo. they'll provide for you. Right here, it'll be based on Lauren, it's like based on your email or something like that. Right. Sample course. So you can experiment with this.
That's a sandbox for you.
It's a sandbox with that.
Sample course 101.
Yep.
Mhm.
And they also give you some sample. Here they are at the bottom here. Some sample surveys as well. You got something like this one as well that you can play with, you can edit, you can try those out. If you want to see what it looks like, there's a preview feature. You can even just put your own email address in there like we did today and send it to yourself and take it. Those are things you can do to get acquainted with the system and to experiment without concern that it's going to be of any issue, of any consequence. Sandbox is just an expression that IT people use for fake systems to experiment with. All right. All right, so let's see if you actually want to add a course, what that looks like. How are we on time? Okay. Yeah, so when is time to build a course? The first thing you do, you already know when you're teaching, even before you have your roster finalized, I'm going to teach a course. So I could go in here, I'm going to teach in the spring, the fall semester, I'll teach management 312 section 4, right? And I put all 22, there we go. All right. And then I say, and you can even if some of you teach remotely, teach on multiple campuses, different time zones, you can assign different time zones to them, different universities. So somehow I got Northeastern in here from working with Barbara on this. So I could say I'm teaching at Northeastern. And it's very simple. You just add the course. Right. That's it. Now, you've already seen me enroll students before, right? That's the next step. So we get out of here. We go back to courses. Make sure I'm doing this right. Or you can even do it here, right? Enroll. Right, and you click enroll, and that's where you can manually type them in. You can copy and paste from Excel, whatever you like. And it has instructions if you have more than 100 students, and God bless you if you do. So
What I like that you would have the list of students, which is in alphabetical order, and then you can assign different teams, and then it'll organize them by team.
That is, I think, the number one, for me, that is the number one value add of this, because all I have to do that once, and they do everything else just automatically in the back end.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
also, if you have GAs or you co-teach, which is also a challenge, but kind of like Barbara and I are doing today, you can add other instructors to your course. So I can come in here, I can say Larson, Northeastern.
And I think the other thing that can be helpful to just remember is that you start with a course, so you set up a course first, and then you add students to the course, of course. And then within the course, you'll have sessions, which are the surveys themselves, right? And then within a session, of course, you have questions. So that also just keeping that terminology, kind of thinking about that as a bit of a hierarchy that can be helpful too. So you know what you're looking at a given point in time.
Sometimes you do that in the middle of the semester so that
You can do that in the middle of the
get
semester.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I do it 4 times. I run 4 sessions. The first one is just for them to try, it doesn't count. It's just so they get an idea of what the process is,
And what the feedback will look like.
what it's feedback and how it works and where they stand. So it's not like, oh, I didn't understand. Now it's like, oh no, we've had fair warning. And then they have, after each deliverable, they do one. And the first one is after the first deliverable. And then I say, okay, everyone after this counts. And
Really cool. Encourage dedication to switch teams. I mean, if you had three different teams and a self-rate, that could be pretty a good learning of your team behavior.
oh yeah, if you rotated them, oh boy, I didn't think about that. That's something for tomorrow's session. Talk about that one. If you if you're in attendance, but I'll bring that up if you're not.
You know, my husband assigns his teams after the midterm, and he used to try and balance them. And now he puts the worst performers in the same team because their teams of three and they can't, and then these
Yeah.
slackers kind of get carried along.
Okay.
And this way they have to figure it out. the
Yeah,
three
but that's, again, that's another good topic for our session tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's so I just want to stay focused because we
Because
got,
I don't have the guts to do that, I have to be honest. I
Yeah.
feel like it.
okay. But again, good, that's a great topic for tomorrow. I want to say, just we got a few things we want to hit and about this tool, but tomorrow's session is about the managing the overall project. All right, so when you want to add a feedback session, click this session up in the menu, bring this up. You say add a new session, and then you just call it whatever you want. But you, why is that? Okay. Forgot about this part. Yeah. So yeah, this is, like I said, they offer you so many options that it can be overwhelming. It's still overwhelming me because I've seen this morning and I forgot about it. You create a brand new session, which they have pre-existing templates. You can use theirs, or use them with your own questions, or you can copy one of your previous ones. So I always just do that. Sorry. So I'm not going to look at their pre-built ones. You can look at those on your own.
I
Well-
think that's worth mentioning, like,
Yeah.
this is one of these tools where the first time you do it, it'll take a little bit longer. Second through infinity, it's really like super simple unless you make changes.
If you get a session you like, you get it set the way you like, it's just super easy after that point. It's just getting there. And this is why I wanted to do this workshop, is that it can be very overwhelming. When you set up a session, one thing you will have to do each time is set up the opening time and the closing time. It's just when it's available, when it gets announced, when it's going to close, and that was fine for our purposes, and a grace period. Because the system sends out periodic reminders, and you can manually send reminders too. Students say, oh, I didn't get the link. I know I was going to feedback. I didn't. Just go to that. You go and send a reminder to them. Like that's how I got your links to you, by sending reminders. In fact, so we create that. Oops, not be empty. How about that? Let's see. And then we'll,
Just call it test.
let's see, test. There we go. There it is. Now we want to add a question. Again, this is where the options start coming in. They have some preset questions. Don't have to point to this here. These questions, those are actually pre-designed, fully set up questions. You want to talk about, these?
Yeah, so basically, they're pretty much what they say. You have a contribution to team option, which you can establish as either a % over or under fair share. But and then go ahead. I think, okay, and then there's also that assigning points, which I think they've migrated more to in recent years. They have an open text one. That's the one that I use a lot for, what would you like your teammates to know? Both, good and bad. And then, sorry. The first one is the first open text one is them telling me what they think they did well or not well. So I can kind of get a sense of their self-awareness. And then the next one is the peer feedback. So what would you like your peers to know? And that goes to each teammate as well as to the instructor. And then these are just, comments, as it says, about the team. How do you think the team worked? Again, open text. And then, anything that you want. Is there anything else you'd like me to know, right? So the format of these is all open text, and you can just, you can reword it. You have a lot of flexibility in what it sounds like. But the reason that these show up as different kinds is because they're all set up to show different things to different members of the class. So, you know, the one that is reflection will only be between the student and the instructor. Whereas the one that's peer feedback will be obviously to, you know, visible by peers as well as the instructor. And then some of these, the team feedback and the peer commentary, you have the option to decide if peers are going to see that or if it's just going to go to the instructor. So that's why they're showing up as 4 different kinds when they're all essentially open text.
John has a question.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Maybe
sure.
maybe I missed you saying this, but when they see the feedback from other students, are the students' names available or are they anonymous?
Either.
They are, right, you have that option also, you can set it up either way. So like when I do the, you know, what do you want them to do or not do, I have it anonymous. But you can have it show up such that they can see.
Yeah, I'll show you, we'll do one question and you'll see all the different feature, you know, options you have to set with it. I just want to emphasize something because it might be unclear with this one. We won't have time to pull this up. It's a reframing. So I think Christy and I have used this. We go, okay, assign them a score from 0 to 100. This says it starts at even contribution and it's how much percent above or below even. It's a different framing. It's a different type of question.
If any of you in your course teach contribution bias, it's like live, you know, really great example. I often talk to my students about that, how, you know, I see contribution bias every single time when I do that.
So you could potentially do what I do, which is I have them do it individually, but then I have them, they have to come to agree on distribution for their team. And the easiest is 100 points for everybody.
Right.
And
But-
that's what a lot of people default to, especially if they're conflict avoidant. But if there was someone who really took the lead and they knew the project was outstanding because of this person, they could assign them more, but then everyone else had to take less because it has to total. And you could probably do that in here.
Yeah, you can, absolutely, but you can also not just do it once, you can do it on many dimensions.
But
And-
could they like huddle around the computer and do it together?
But this is where I use, I think Ray mentioned this, is I also use force ranking. I balance it. They can have ties. They could go even across the board, but then force ranking takes them out of that. They can't just claim that everybody did exactly the same because all of us know that never ever happens. It's impossible that it happens. So we could talk more about that as strategies at the end. What I'd like to do right now, is there a type of question that you would like to see demoed that you go, oh, I'd like to implement this specific question? Because I'll show you one and then show you the options.
We should take a more basic
Question.
one of the-
Okay, so I'll use,
one of the basic
um,
ones.
well, just do the force ranking then. The ranking, yeah, I'll just rank the recipients.
While he's setting that, one other thing I'm gonna say is you can actually also have students do ratings or other things for the entire course, for the entire class. So I have a question in my class where I ask students, and I tell them they can't pick people who are in their team. But I say, who from the class discussion did you learn the most? And then they have to pick 2 people who are not on their team. And teammates, and I set it up in teammates such that it gives them a whole list of the class. I think I have to actually tell them not, the one thing I have to do manually is make sure they didn't pick anybody. They don't, I mean, they follow instructions. And then I'm able to see like who got the most votes, you know, so I'm able to see like who did the students value in class discussion, you know, who did they actually learn from, as opposed to somebody just, you know, like talking from my benefit. Right? So that's also a nice feature that's not just within the team. It can also be, and it can also be used to have student feedback of the instructor if you want that as well.
Right. So
Barbara, can you set it up so that the person they said receives that feedback?
I don't know. I doubt it, but I
I do that, but I end up having to send out comments.
Yeah.
The person manually.
I mean, this is just, I just do it as like a multiple choice, I just, pick, pick, and then I just, and I'll usually tell like the top 3 students as part of my feedback. Oh, and that's the other thing, you can also set it up such, and I do this, you can also set it up such that you have a question that you fill out for the students. And so, there's also like instructor fills out this part of the survey and it goes out to the students. And so that's often where I'll give them the like, you were number 3 in the voting.
All right, so this ranking question, well, some of the options here, this is unique. These options here are unique to ranking. And this one is if you want to be for a forced rank or not forced rank. So a forced rank meaning you have to be in different ranks. So I leave that unchecked for this item, but you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want. I guess that's what makes this great, but also incredibly complicated. Then the feedback path, this is a question that implicitly came up before, is who is the feedback going to, right? And from whom? So you can also have instructors give feedback using this tool. I never used it that way. Have you, Barbara?
Yeah,
You
that's
have-
what I was just saying. I do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. Not just like one question where I'm giving feedback.
So you
Just-
can have feedback on the instructors. And the one that most of us use and I use exclusively is students giving feedback to their team members, but not themselves. Now, some of you want to include, they want them to include themselves. That's your prerogative. I
So
don't
this
do
is
it that
the
way because it's
self-rated
biased.
versus no self-rated
Yeah.
option there.
Yeah. So again, I just take the bias out of the equation, but that's my
I
bias.
love the bias.
Yeah, you love the bias. All right. All right, so I'll just do it my way because it's better. And kidding, of course. And then this last part is also important, is who can see what. All right, so now the setting that I use is it's anonymous to the recipient, but visible to the instructor. Excuse me, I use this option. Anonymous recipient, visible to instructor. It's possible that the entire team sees what everybody got. I think, Sarah, that might get to your question about can they see where they stand. If you do that option, then they would see how they compare to their teammates and what scores they got. You could have it anonymous to everybody. I'm not sure why you'd want that, but that's okay. And visible to instructors only, visible only to the recipient and the instructors. So, and if it's this way, then actually the giver is not anonymous. Then they know who gave them the score.
And you'll notice on the bottom, there are custom visibility options. So these
On
are
top
not
of it.
enough options for you. We won't go there now.
No, but yeah, you
Like
can,
you could actually go even further if you wanted to, so.
and then knock yourselves out if
This
you
was
want
built by
to.
a bunch of computer science students.
Yeah, which as a computer science undergrad, this has really made my life hard, switching over to our world, is we're trained to envision every possible contingency. And that's why we end up with systems like this that are way too complicated and very dysfunctional as an OB researcher. Learn that the hard way. Yeah. So why does that not? When you have your session assigned to a course, because I have a new course that has no students in it. If it did have students, you could also preview it here as one of the students.
You can still preview it as an instructor. Jason.
As an instructor, I could preview it as if I were Barbara.
But
Right.
since you're not, yeah, there won't be any questions because you weren't asking me to do
Right.
anything on the survey. But yeah, once you get your students loaded in there, you can actually preview it as a specific student. So that's a great way to go in and check to make sure your teams are working the way you expect them to, because you just go in with a specific student and then you can see like, are they matched up correctly with their teams? And the other thing I like about this is they're incredibly careful. There's several different places where they will show you who sees what. So they're incredibly careful about anonymity and, making sure that you don't actually accidentally like blast out sensitive information to the entire course. So I think they do a great job of that as well.
All right, so let's do a quick rundown, and we'll have plenty of time, I think, to go over the processing and then do some wrap-up questions. Before we get there. All right, so now we're going to go look back at those 10 different question types that you could possibly pick, right? And what they mean, and what you've already seen some of them. Essay, which is narrative response, open-ended comments to or about teammates, singular or plural. You can also, if you like Likert scales, you go for that. You can have Likert scales that have allow them pick multiple responses on per question. You can have a rubric. If you don't want to add all your questions separately, you just make a whole rubric of multiple choice questions. Again, this is quite involved. If you don't want to, if you just want to do Christy, if you just want to do a point system, you can just assign, have a numerical scale. That's just half of it. Distribute points among the students, or among options individually. Oh, it flips it. I'm sorry. That's what that's it. Flips it. It says rate Christy, and then it's like on professionalism, contributions, class participation. Yeah, and that's his points. It's how your relative performance is across the dimensions. That's how. Thank you. Overall team contribution. That was that one that Barbara with the pre-template, the template number one, above or below the mean or the even contribution. The ranking the options again where they're strongest. Sarah, that might also get back to your question. It's like, oh, what is Sarah best at? What's Sarah worst at? Right, things like that. And then ranking the recipients, which is the one we did. Any questions? I know it's a lot. There's a really good help file in there in the teammates application here. If you go to help, you can have all sorts of things here.
Were you gonna push out the responses?
Once they respond to this, the survey.
Yeah.
You probably have a spreadsheet.
Exactly. That's what we're doing next.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're doing that next. I just wanted to show you that they have, and on top of a very comprehensive application, they have an extremely comprehensive help file that you can consult and also email them directly if you're not sure about how something's working. All right, so that's all that. And this one is specifically, that's where I want to get to is here. What all these questions mean and how to set them up. Right, so you don't have to remember it all. John. You just go here and see what it has what we want. Now, June asked me about what are we doing next? All right, so once you have responses, so let's go back to our sessions. And we have the session, what you did, which is now closed because, oh, yeah, should be closed. Yes, because it closed at 2. Get my hours all confused. I'm from the East Coast, so I cannot keep my time straight here. Go to results. And from there, what I like about this is you can also preview the results and proof them. What I mean is with open-ended comments, you never know that somebody might say something they shouldn't say. Now, I haven't had that happen. What I have had happen though is I definitely had people confused. They crisscrossed their feedback. So what was written to Gabrielle was really meant for Christy. It was very clear. So you can go and actually edit the comments and fix them. On top of that, what it allows you to do, and we could do that here. Are we okay? All right, so now if we want to say, how was Tim Baldwin scored? Oh boy, Tim.
I'm surprised to see you've never had negative comments.
Yeah, I didn't know the numbers went that high. Right, so
Give me a chance for analysis.
Yeah. right, but now to be serious, though, that these numbers are not what I preview, unless I'm trying to figure out who's missing, who didn't do their feedback, or what if they're scoring missing or something like that. Otherwise, I wouldn't look at that. What I do look at is the open-ended comments. And that's what I grade. And nobody made any. Well, there's some. Oh, you did. Okay, there you go. All right, that we could work with that. All right, and that's what I look for: problematic comments, erroneous comments. But I also assign a grade to this, a 1 to 5 grade based on the quality of the and I emphasize with them, it's really important with unsolicited feedback of this sort of this nature, that they have to be specific. Cite examples. Just and this happens, and I'm not, whoever said that, I'm not picking on them because I know you're just trying to be quick. But a lot of them will say stuff exactly like that. Oh, you did a good job. Everybody did a good job. And that's gets a very low score in my system. Kevin.
Can you scroll a little bit so that my teammate can see that?
Okay. Sarah, the afterburners, which you guys were, let's go by the team.
A perfect role model for all kinds of vaguely specific reasons.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Sorry, you study this stuff? Yeah.
Right. All right. So now there's an option that you can have the results go out automatically, or as I do not do that. I have to publish manually, but unfortunately, sometimes I forget to publish them. So if you do that, be sure to set a reminder, put it in your calendar, so they get their feedback. The risk is if you just do it, let it go automatically, then it just goes out the way it is.
I always do it.
Yeah. So, and then what you can do, and this is June's question, I think right before we got here, you can have a printable view of this. I don't think you want to look at it, but I can show you what it looks like. And it can also take a long time to load because there's so much data there. When we do a CSV file, sometimes they're close to 3,000 lines. Right. But there's good news. It's good news. But that is really small. Holy cow. How can I make that bigger? I don't know. Yeah. Well, sorry. Again, I don't usually use that. What I do instead is I download the results. And this is a fairly small group for a class. Right. And this is just for this group of 14 people. We have 531 lines of data. Now the good news for you. So what I did is I wrote an Excel macro to handle this. And what it does is allow you to get the averages for all your items. So if you remember, let me enhance the size of that so you can see it a little better. It's gonna be a very narrow window there to make that work. All right. So these are the numeric items in the survey. Right. Last exercise is the deliverable itself on the project, meetings, and professionalism. Right. And so these are the average. These are actual student scores. I just anonymize them. These are actual student scores. And this is the force ranking item. Now, this file, which I'm happy to share with you, has detailed instructions over to the left in this worksheet that explain exactly what you need to do to get the data in that form, with each step showing you what part of the file that you need to work with. This is the raw data file, and then the steps, and then what you end up with. The backup, oh, come on, Zoom. That's how I'm recording the session. The backup is just in case I screw something up. I don't want to have to reproduce this all over again, which is part of the instructions. In fact, it tells you make a backup worksheet in case you have an error, or something is off when you do it. Anyhow, the macro is already written, and I've worked quite a while on it, but it's been well worth it because now once I have all those data there, it's just a matter of just going down that big file and copying and pasting the averages. Then I just go boom and bang. I have these data points, which gives an adjustment score based on the standard deviations from the mean for each team. Because what I realized is if you just did it based on the overall average, it's not that precise. Okay, now maybe if we did it by 100 points, it would work better. I'm not sure. Again, that's a question for Kevin and Bill to sort out. But the way I do it is based on, here's what the average is for that person. That's the number of standard deviations away from the team average, and therefore their adjustment is they get an 88, which means they're losing. If the team made 100 on the project, they'd only get 88. Somebody on the team would be getting 110.
Oh, 102. No, you're right,
110,
112.
112, actually, if there's
And
two
I
people,
found
yeah.
that I say nothing below 80 or about 120.
Right, I do the same thing. Okay. So, Kevin, reverse your hand. Okay. And the force ranking, Ray or anybody else is interesting. The way what I do with that is just highlight that so it stands out. Is I can then look and say, all right, does this jive? Does this make sense that the person is ranked 4.6 out of 5 or 6 people? I have yes, that makes sense. 1.6 and get 108 yes. Now 2.2 and 111, that seems maybe something's off there. Maybe double check it. And maybe my formula needs to be adjusted. 4.6, 88, that's fine. 3.2 and 100, that's a little bit curious, right? And so on and so forth. And that's what Kevin and Bill and I were talking about earlier in the morning about, hey, how does the system work? How will be a good formula look like? You know, what will be the expert recommendation to do something like this, as opposed to my just winging it.
And I'm winging even more. So I tend to, I use it to adjust final project grades on a very big project that they do all semester long. And so and then I also use the part about everybody else in the class I use to help support my class participation grading. And I typically have, and so somewhere between 30 and 40 students in this course. So, and I've gotten to know them very well. So it's much more of a eyeball, like, okay, look at the data, you know, and I do love you, Jason, but I don't use the macro. So, 'cause I use it for what I do. So it can be very highly quantitative, or it can be a little more supportive, depending on your approach.
And I'm happy to give the macro away. If you need support on it, then we'd have to negotiate a value exchange, because I could not be tech support to the whole world. But
You don't get any pushback from students. It's, you know, grade sensitivity, you know, whereas you're kind of like, well, you know, I don't know. Like, I try to be really salient, really transparent. Like, you know, you got 93, 94 is an 8. You know, you get an 8-9.
so
And it's actually got 930 out of 1,000. So it's, you know, they're 50. You're with your nuancing, it could literally, you know, could happen.
yeah, it's an adjustment, right? It's a function. Their overall grade is a function of how the team does, right? Plus their adjustment. They could have 110% adjustment and still get a bad grade because their team did terribly.
True.
You know? And I never had that pushback, but my response is, if 4 people concur about your performance, something's up, right? And so they never challenge that.
I will say the times when I do it much less quantitatively, so presumably less, you know, you might say less transparently, but those people, they know. Like they, you know, they will put in, I will tell you, a great leading indicator for who your social loafers are is that they will be the ones that ranking everybody exactly the same and taking the 100 points and distributing exactly equally and saying everything was great for the team.
But I'm an A student, and I've only gotten A's until I took your course, Professor Moore.
I've had, I've had people tell me they didn't graduate with honors because of my course, so I'm like,
But on that very score, Barbara, do you get a sense that you get some legitimate variance, and that one of the concerns with that variance is you get a truly inverted self-ranking? That is, your top people are very self-critical
yes.
and
No,
say, I could have contributed more, and thereby it really gets you self. So not only was I honest, I self-defeated in terms of
And that's
my
one of
rating.
that's one of the reasons that I don't do as quantitative as an adjustment, because I know that, and especially women, right? that the women who I know in some cases, because I've had meetings with the teams during the term, it's a change management course and they're working on projects, and I sometimes am like talking to the people that they're working with on the change, and it is often the best students in the course who have like, opposite inverse contribution bias, right? And I know that, and so I'm more interested in that as a point of accountability. How accountable are you holding yourself? I don't use those numbers as a straight like, oh, okay, well then, but some of that is the way in which I word the question too, that I really want their own perception of how they contributed relative to the team. And I look for, typically I tend to believe the ones that have more variance. When they're less variant, then I'm gonna go and look at those text responses pretty closely. And if I don't see anything compelling in there, I'm gonna be like, well, this is kind of, one thing that I do, I haven't taught this course for a couple of years because of COVID, but I am teaching it in the next spring. And one of the things that I'm gonna do is pick up on what Jason does and start grading the open text, answers as part of, the quality of that feedback as part of their course participation. I think that'll help.
Yeah, I mean, I love the potential thing. I mean, even to get to process things about, you thought you were a good contributor, but you dominated.
Yeah.
You thought you were a
Right.
good contributor, but we only talked about things everybody already knew. I mean, all those standard team biases, the team sort of thinks like it went well, but it didn't. In any objective discussion or review of a team, this gives you a little more precision that you might be able to get at that, other than why we got a good grade, we did fine, I like that.
Well, and the frequency, because it does so much for you that you can then afford to do it more often, as opposed to just once a year. It's Mr. Karen. Or is it Karen?
Christy.
Christy, sorry.
I guess I come back to learning. I mean, what do you want students to learn from this? And that's where I think the feedback is so valuable. And fairness is a part of it too. But that was one reason why it didn't necessarily bother me if student teams negotiated and everybody got 100, because they had voice, they had that opportunity. But sometimes I would have a student come to me later and go, oh, I wish I would have said this, I wish I would have allocated more points to myself or something. And I'd say, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can resubmit it. But to me, it was all about the learning about doing that in in their future organization.
And this
And
is
there's
something
opportunities here.
that's
for
so
that.
interesting about this tool is that it really just gives you this huge range of possibilities, and you get to choose what kind of feedback you want them to give to whom, and about what, how often, et cetera, et cetera. But it is, my Pascal computer science Fortran classes that I took when I was undergrad, that'll date me. But that's where I learned garbage in, garbage out, right? And then later in finance classes. So you have to think about beyond the tool. You have to think about the dynamic, the information, what you want them to accomplish, right? One other thing I'll say along the lines of what you said about having students negotiate in the team, if that capability is not available, I really do encourage you to reach out through the help desk or whatever. Because one thing that we have seen this improve over the years and get smoother reviews and so forth. And they actually do take suggestions for additional functionality. So if you think you've got something that's not covered, I'd say definitely send it in. So they're not going to do it right away, but they do take suggestions and they're really interested in that.
June, you were very patient. You had a question, but we didn't get to.
Oh, no problem. I was wondering that, what if some students not respond to this survey?
Well, that happens. And
Yeah,
they get
so-
zero, they get zeros.
Yeah.
And they sometimes, they'll email, oh, professor, I missed it. I know I was supposed to do the survey. And I say, that's why we do the one that doesn't count. So they've already been through the process, and it reminds them, they have the the course management software. It has scheduled. The teammates will put as many reminders as you want. You can do manual reminders. It gets at least 3 reminders to say, look, sorry, it's too late. And the consequence for them is they don't get to have a say in what the adjustments are. Somebody else gets the say.
Yeah, I totally agree that you've got to have an actual penalty for non-participation, because otherwise they just, they'll blow it off. So yeah, my students get on their participation. That's what I mean. Like you have to have not just like, oh, you don't get to participate in the exercise, but oh yeah, you're losing, like mine lose 5 points off their participation grade. Which,
Yeah,
I
I roll
my
my
participation grade is a
too.
large part of the class, so yeah.
Well, we are down the street. Kevin,
Yeah, so Jason, for you, what proportion of the total participation grade would you make this assignment?
so the feedback, so what I do it is, this is a 5-point scale on their feedback, because there's so many, I don't have time to do detail. I just occasionally do, if it's exceptionally good, I'll give a comment. I even give bonus points. I say, well, that was amazing feedback. You get 8 instead of 5. Otherwise, just going through, because I'll have probably 70 students next term, and I could have that twice over if I have 2 sections. I do 5, so 5, the average of that, and I combine it with their attendance and participation, and then professionalism, and they make that an overall 15% participation score for the final grade. I have a rubric for it, 1 through 5.
Students know that.
Yeah, I posted, and somebody, I even get suggestions about, I think somebody said, common feedback, Jeff McMullen taught me this one, I'm sure he's not the only one that uses it, is what they should start doing, keep doing, stop doing, that type of feedback. Just as to give them a guide as how they could structure it. Most of them don't cite specific examples. They give the same feedback to everybody. I'm like, well, all right. Now, Kevin, I wish I had more room in my syllabus. I think that was their project too, with the allocation of grades, like how much you count. It's probably too low to be enough of a carrot to say, a stick, if you don't do this, you're going to get a big hit. So that's probably explains my high rate of blowing it off. So, all right. Any other questions? Final comments, Barbara?
Are the Singaporean folks funded? Why do they want to do this for free?
That is a great question.
I'm thinking they're collecting data.
Well, I looked at this. I looked at their website, and they said one of their frequently asked questions: are you doing research? Are you using this? And it said no. Are you collecting the data and using it for research? No and no, adamantly. Their funding comes from grants. They do have sponsor institutions. So if the Kelly School wanted to sponsor and say, we're very grateful for teammates, you could have an arrangement where you sponsor the project. I don't know what that buys you in the back end. They do reserve the right to start charging for it. And they said their policy is that if they do that, they'll give at least 1 semester notice that they're going to start charging. But they have a hell of a market share right now in 2,400 institutions across 100 countries. So they have over 2,400 institutions participating across over 100 countries. So it's represented, institutes represented. So if I'm like the only one, Greensboro, that's the one.
But in many instances, multiple instructors.
Yeah, well, that's
So it's
helpful.
meant-
Well,
it's more
I
instructors.
wonder if there are some places that opt in to let their data be used. I don't know.
Well,
I-
no, they
I
never
don't think
promote
so.
us about that.
I don't think so.
No.
Well, maybe they have to do that.
I mean, in part because it would be a massive FERPA violation, and they, like, I know people on the faculty here, it's a really good school, and it's a serious faculty, and I think they would have confidentiality problems
Yeah.
themselves, but they also know that if they're, if anybody, what are they gonna do, like, never present it at a conference, like, I think it's hard to, in a university setting, or a private company, I'd say, yeah, like, no. I mean, they're doing it for free and they're a private company. I don't care what they say, they're taking the data, but I think as a well-established university, I tend to trust them on that.
Or maybe they're using the data to improve it. And they get to benefit from it.
I know they've had grad students working on it over time, and I think that maybe something themselves, I don't know.
Yeah, they have a list of everybody that's worked on the project. That's extensive. It's a lot of students.
It says the data is protected by Google based on Google policies.
All right.